I accompanied His Highness in exile for 3,000 miles. Yet once he regained his position, he found me repulsive and lowly. Later, in the grand hall where merits were discussed and rewards given, I only asked him for one thing. His Highness thought I would ask for being his crown princess. I bowed deeply, my voice soft yet firm. I wish His Highness to grant a marriage between me and General Shen. His Highness's eyes widened in anger, finally understanding. Throughout the 3,000 miles of exile, from beginning to end, the one I loved was never him. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. The palace banquet was harmonious and fully attended. Only I knelt in the hall, under the gaze of all, enduring Consort Shu's humiliation. Consort Shu threw a wine cup at my forehead, cursing. Today is the first palace banquet since His Highness's return, who allowed someone as lowly as you to attend? His Highness had no wife, and in the palace, everyone respected his newly accepted Consort Shu. I dared not dodge, only endured it, pressing my lips together. A maid said His Highness invited me to the banquet. As soon as I said this, Consort Shu sneered, and everyone laughed. Who didn't know, even though I accompanied His Highness in exile for 3,000 miles. After his return, he refused to see me even once. Much less give me a title. Because I was originally just a maid of the Wei family. Yet during His Highness's exile, I replaced Consort Shu, who had an original marriage agreement with His Highness, and married him. His Highness invited you? Consort Shu curled her lips, mocking. His Highness once said you are the greatest shame of his life. I lowered my eyes, blood dripping from my forehead. After a long time, I forced out 3 words, is that so? His Highness once said the same words during exile, but at that time, he said, Rui, I am fortunate to have you. Consort Shu refused to let me leave, making me kneel outside the palace doors. Inside, music played softly. Outside, wind and rain battered, soaking me completely. I had no name or title, even though I was recorded in the Wei family genealogy as a concubine's daughter. I was still of low birth, and no one was willing to speak for me. The only one who would speak for me, General Shen, was no longer here. Suddenly, a eunuch announced, His Highness the Crown Prince arrives. I was already kneeling, no need to rise. Knowing His Highness despised my lowly status and our embarrassing past, I lowered my eyes, not daring to move. Yet I saw the hem of a dark robe brush past me, meeting my soaked lake-colored skirt. Only His Highness wore dark robes. I waited silently for him to pass. But then a voice came from above. His Highness coldly asked, Wei Rui, do you regret accompanying me in exile? I was stunned, realizing he was speaking to me. I raised my head, smiling lightly and sincerely, no. Rui has never regretted it. The sound of rain was like a waterfall, not knowing if His Highness heard my words. But he seemed dazzled by my smile for a moment, his hand in his sleeve rubbed slightly. Rui has never regretted it. Never regretted accompanying the Crown Prince in exile. Never regretted shielding the Crown Prince from many hardships. Because this was General Shen's wish. What he wanted, Rui would accomplish for him. For some reason, His Highness showed unexpected kindness, having someone send me back. I lived with an elderly palace maid in the servants' quarters. She cooked me medicine to ward off the cold and quietly advised me. Tomorrow, in the grand hall, the Crown Prince will discuss merits and rewards. You must seize the opportunity to ask for a concubine's title, and you can become a lady in the future. The old palace maid knew how many injuries I carried. Such a fragile body, yet supporting His Highness through the exile. Even though His Highness now despised me, asking for a title wasn't too much. I held the medicine bowl, listening to the rain hitting the window outside. The dim candle flickered like a bean. I shook my head, my eyes bright, rarely showing a hint of girlish innocence. I have someone else in mind. I took out a silk pouch from my burning heart, carefully unfolding it. Inside was a marriage contract. Though stained with blood and tears, it was somewhat blurred, but the names were clear. Shen Shi and Wei Rui. His Highness liked Consort Shu. I also had someone I liked. But His Highness was a bit luckier than me. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by the wind, and in my daze, I suddenly remembered. When I married His Highness as a substitute, it was also such a night. No flowers or candles, no joyful hall, only 3,000 miles of road and a body full of wounds. Actually, I had also been His Highness's wife. This is my first time in the Golden Throne Hall. After His Highness was reinstated, today there was a ceremony in the hall to discuss merits and bestow rewards. Everyone who helped His Highness during his exile was generously thanked. The Emperor has been seriously ill for a long time and has already handed over the major affairs to the Crown Prince. Promotion, vast lands, gold, and jewels were all just a matter of his word. The Crown Prince and consort Shu sat together on the high platform, their presence too imposing to look at directly. I kept my eyes lowered, waiting for the ceremony officer to call my name. The rewards given to those before me were so grand that it was shocking to hear. I don't know how long it took, but the sharp voice of the eunuch came. Wei Rui, step forward. My heart skipped a beat, and I stepped forward to kneel on the polished floor. Before I could speak, consort Shu spoke, her voice carrying a warning. Rui, you were originally just my maid. It was a stroke of luck that you could take my place and accompany His Highness for a period. It is a blessing from heaven. You must remember your identity and not covet things you shouldn't have. Earlier, I heard their discussions. Although people scold me for being lowly, they have all heard of my devotion to His Highness. And they all expect me to ask for a position as a concubine. The eunuch recited the things I did for His Highness. In the 10th year of the dynasty, the Crown Prince was poisoned and blinded. Wei Rui acted as his guide. In the same spring, Wei Rui in City Y tested poison for the Crown Prince, nearly dying. At the end of spring, during exile, surrounded by bandits, Wei Rui fed the Crown Prince with her blood. With each sentence, the surroundings grew quieter, and consort Shu's face became more unsightly. Towards the end, even the eunuch's voice trembled. The Crown Prince interrupted, coldly saying, "It's already enough." Wei Rui, what do you want? The tone sounded like I could become the Crown Princess if I wanted. His Highness always thought I would want a title, even though this past was humiliating for him. I took a breath, bowed deeply, my voice light yet firm. May His Highness grant marriage between me and General Shen. I don't want to be the Crown Princess, nor gold and silver. I want General Shen. It was as if thunder suddenly struck around, and everyone was astonished. Suddenly, there was a loud noise from above. I looked up, and the young, gloomy Crown Prince had broken the dragon's head from the armrest of the throne. I pulled out a worn marriage certificate from my sleeve. Looking straight at His Highness, not retreating a bit, full of tears, and knocked my head heavily on the ground. For the help in the past, I beg His Highness to grant marriage between me and General Shen, Shinji. The Crown Prince's eyes were wide with rage, blood flowing continuously from his hand. At this moment, he finally understood. 3,000 miles, I came for another person. My kindness to His Highness was for another person. From beginning to end, I never loved him. The atmosphere in the hall was tense, only consort Shu relaxed her grip and laughed meaningfully. General Shen has long sacrificed for the country. Rui is of low status, marrying a dead man is not impossible. Your Highness, why not fulfill them? As soon as she finished, the Crown Prince suddenly turned his head and glanced at her. That glance was terrifying. Consort Shu turned pale and dared not speak again. His Highness turned back to look at me. Blood dripping on the ground, his expression cold as if he couldn't feel the pain. I waited a long time before receiving his answer. His Highness said, General Shen is of noble birth, you a mere maid, how can you match? Rui, how can you match? Actually, I asked Shinji this question too. He was a young general, the dream of countless noble ladies, yet somehow he liked me. At that time, I was still in the Wei residence, just an ordinary maid. I and Shinji were really not a match. So, I always treated him coldly, politely refusing him. Shinji was successful and proud for 18 years, yet he met defeat with me, but he enjoyed it. Until one day, the wooden hibiscus by the Wei residence wall bloomed overnight, pink clusters. The young general answered me across the wall. All the rules in the world, you are so good, I like you just because I like you. What does it matter if we match or not? My mother laughs at me, how can I pursue a girl without even speaking to her? I have only one thing to say. Rui, I want to marry you and take you home, nothing can stop me. Shinji was sincere and open, never hiding his love. Later, the capital was in chaos. Shen died protecting the crown prince in the turmoil. His confidant came to return the marriage certificate. The confidant said, "The general is dead, you can marry freely in the future." Shen feared nothing, was carefree in the capital. Unexpectedly, he was stopped by life and death. He ultimately couldn't marry me. His Highness refused to grant me a marriage. I was the only one who entered the Golden Throne Hall that day and did not receive His Highness's favor, becoming the latest laughingstock. I angered His Highness, and Consort Shu was the happiest person. The Wei family has produced prime ministers for generations. And the old master was a veteran of 3 reigns. Consort Shu, Wei Shu, is the only legitimate daughter of the Wei family. So favored that when the crown prince was exiled, the Wei family could arrange for me to marry in her place. The crown prince's restoration also had a share of the Wei family's efforts, but it was ultimately unreasonable. Therefore, Wei Shu, who should have been the crown princess, can now only be a secondary consort. That day, after I left the Golden Throne Hall, I was walking along the palace path when I encountered Consort Shu's sedan chair. I and the other palace servants knelt to the side. Consort Shu should have ignored us as usual, but she had the eunuch stop and turned her head from the sedan chair, sighing leisurely. "Rui, I didn't expect you to have such deep feelings for General Shen." My spine stiffened a bit. If there was anyone in the world who most didn't want me to be with General Shen, it was Wei Shu. Shen and His Highness the Crown Prince were as close as brothers. She could never accept the humiliation of having her maid become her sister-in-law. Moreover, back then, Shen often humbled himself for my sake. Now, what Consort Shu said was certainly not something good. But her next words made me raise my head. Consort Shu smiled. "Do you know how Shen died?" I didn't know. I only knew that when the emperor investigated the remnants of Lord Wang's rebellion, he nearly exterminated the crown prince's maternal family and countless noble families. All perished in those days of chaos. Shen died on a rainy day. The capital rained for several days, unable to wash away the smell of blood. Consort Shu looked down at me, speaking word by word. They trapped Shen making him watch helplessly as his trusted followers were killed one by one, then shot arrows through his legs, forcing him to crawl on the ground. They slashed his face with knives, crushed his bones, and forced him to crawl under their legs. Heart-wrenching and liver-hurting, my spirit collapsed. I had never felt such pain in a single moment. I heard my voice, hoarse beyond measure. "Who are they?" Consort Shu laughed without answering, meaningfully. "Who doesn't matter, you just need to know that if not for your sake, Shen might not have died. Some people are simply beyond your reach, like Shen like the crown prince." As our eyes met, I suddenly understood something, standing up and rushing forward madly, but was held down firmly by several eunuchs, unable to move. Consort Shu's sedan chair moved on, leaving me behind. I didn't understand her words, but I knew Shen death. Perhaps it was related to Wei Shu. Since hearing those words from Consort Shu, I've been looking for a chance to see His Highness. He and Shen were as close as brothers, knowing something was amiss. He would surely investigate thoroughly. But His Highness was very busy, and it took many attempts before I persuaded a eunuch to report my presence. The emperor is now gravely ill, barely holding on, and all major affairs are handled by the crown prince. When I entered the hall, His Highness was reviewing memorials. It was already dark outside, yet the inside was as bright as day. It's hard to imagine that half a year ago, His Highness and I were in Southern, unable to light even a single candle at night. Fortunately, there were often fireflies by the fence. His Highness's confusion, downfall, and helplessness, his most embarrassing side, I've seen it all. No wonder he doesn't want to see me now. Though I had already paid my respects, His Highness acted as if I wasn't there. Only the right hand holding the red pen was wrapped in bandages, showing the force he used to break the dragon head that day. It wasn't until the lampwick burned out that he raised his head, his gaze dark and unclear. His Highness's brows were gloomy. "Do you still want me to grant you a marriage?" I shook my head. He unconsciously rubbed the thumb ring, lowered his eyes, and after a while, calmly said, "Rui, I can give you a title." I was stunned. Having been by His Highness's side for 3 years, I knew some of his habits. When he was nervous or worried, he liked to rub his fingers. His Highness, very rarely, swallowed his pride to reconcile with me. But that's not what I wanted. I was silent for a long time. The wind outside was fierce, passing through the hall. The shadows of the lamps flickering. With each moment I remained silent, His Highness's face grew uglier. Until it was so dark it seemed about to drip water, hostility rising. Shinji. I had just uttered those 2 words when a palace lamp was blown out by the wind, plunging the hall into darkness. That's the name he least wanted to hear now. His Highness kicked, the table overturned, memorials scattered everywhere. He gritted his teeth, shouting like a trapped beast, "Get out!" The serving eunuchs were so frightened they knelt on the ground. I pressed my lips together, knowing I couldn't say more, silently withdrawing. As I crossed the threshold of the hall door, I turned back, seeing His Highness standing alone, seemingly in tears. Everything is going wrong. I just got scolded by His Highness and walked out, only to bump into Lu Feng, the second son of the Lu family. I have some history with him, so I pretended not to see him and quickly walked past with my head down. But he grabbed my wrist. It felt like being instantly entangled by a venomous snake. Lu Feng's eyes were dark and sunken, looking like he was physically weakened from indulgence. "Rui, long time no see. You're still as beautiful as ever. I heard His Highness doesn't fancy you, so why not become my concubine?" I kept a cold face, struggled to break free, and hurried away. Lu Feng spat behind me, cursing, "Pretentious wench." I pretended not to hear. Lu Feng is Wei Shu's cousin, a notorious playboy in the capital, always coveting my looks. If I hadn't met General Shen back then, I would have been given to Lu Feng as a sexual maid by Wei Shu. Tonight, his determined gaze made me uneasy. But this is the palace, so I thought he wouldn't dare act recklessly. When I returned, the old palace maid sharing the room was already asleep. I took out the marriage certificate in the moonlight. The blood on it was Shinji's, the tear stains were mine. Shinji's name was well chosen. Ji means light. Even if humiliated to death, Shinji remained clean and upright throughout his life. He loved my kindness the most. But Shinji, what if my kindness can't avenge you? What should I do? What should I do? I slept restlessly, and in the middle of the night, I heard something unusual. A pair of large hands urgently touched my body. I suddenly opened my eyes. The window was opened, and under the cold moonlight, I saw the face of the man on top of me. It was Lu Feng, whom I had bumped into at His Highness's place. He pressed my mouth tightly, his lips tasted of blood. The disparity in strength between men and women made it impossible to struggle. I never thought he would be so brazen even in the palace. I opened my eyes wide in despair, but behind Lu Feng, the awakened old palace maid, trembling, smashed a vase over his head. Blood slid down Lu Feng's forehead. He didn't even turn around. Pulled out a dagger from his sleeve, and stabbed back. The dagger pierced the flesh, blood gushed out. The old palace maid couldn't even scream before she stumbled and died on the ground. Lu Feng cursed with a laugh, "Old hag." Lu Feng, having been hit, lost half of his interest, pulled my hair, and slapped me several times. He couldn't hide his disgust. "You're just a maid. Sleeping with you is a blessing for you, understand?" I didn't speak, calmly looking at him as things had come to this point. But this only angered him more. Lu Feng spat on my face, a flash of pride in his expression. "Rui, your expression is just like someone I hate the most." Before he died, he looked at me like this. "Do you know who that person is?" Lu Feng laughed. "You guessed it, didn't you? It's Shinji. People used to say he was like a cloud, while we were mud. But in the end, wasn't he trampled into the mud by us? There are 2 kinds of aristocratic children. One like Shinji, a young general with a promising future. One like Lu Feng, emptied by indulgence, unable to be helped. Shinji never bothered to associate with people like Lu Feng. Lu Feng looked at my face, lust rising again. He buried his head in my neck, one hand searching for my clothes, speaking vaguely, almost boasting. The capital praises Shinji's backbone, never retreating on the battlefield. That day when we surrounded him, I was curious if his bones were really that hard. Just broke them bit by bit, and it was nothing. In the end, we weren't satisfied because he never bowed his head. I told him if he could crawl under us before he died, I wouldn't trouble Rui from the Wei family when I returned. He really did it, it was truly satisfying. Why did you provoke Wei Shu? If she hadn't reminded us, we wouldn't have thought of using the chaos in the capital to surround and kill him. At that time, the Crown Prince's maternal family party, everyone wanted to kill them. Who would care about the death of Shinji? You see, it's just such a simple reason. Just because Wei Shu hated me, just because Lu Feng and his group envied Shinji. My young general died. Lu Feng wasn't afraid to tell me all this. Because I had nothing behind me. I closed my eyes. Does His Highness know? Lu Feng's lips hurriedly kissed down, sneering. What if His Highness knows? Would he offend so many aristocratic families for a dead Shinji? He only then noticed my calmness, just about to raise his head. The hairpin in my hand was already stabbed into the back of his neck. Then I heavily pulled it out, half of the hairpin broke inside, blood splattered on my face. The vase fell, the hairpin broke. I thought, kill him. When the Crown Prince and Consort Shu arrived, Lu Feng was barely clinging to life. The body of the old palace maid was already cold. In truth, she could have avoided this disaster if she had just pretended to be deaf and mute. Gone to sleep, and ignored everything. But she was kind-hearted. I was kneeling with disheveled clothes, blood still visible on my lips. Consort Shu never expected that I, who had always been submissive, would dare to do something so bold. She harshly accused me. Wei Rui, you dare to seduce my cousin and use the opportunity to assassinate a court official. Your crimes are unforgivable, and you deserve death. Someone, take her away. I didn't spare him a glance, my eyes were fixed on His Highness. My face and body were covered in blood, yet I smiled gently. Your Highness, isn't Rui your wife? What punishment should be given to a subject who violates the Crown Princess? Consort Shu sneered at the word Crown Princess. But His Highness remained silent, his dark gaze fell upon my face. He understood my meaning. By saying this, I acknowledged my relationship with His Highness. And accepted the honor he previously promised to give me a title. He spoke slowly, Wei Rui, do you ask for nothing else? I smiled and nodded, Rui only wishes to always be by your Highness's side, with a title, nothing more. His Highness reached out, wiping the blood from my face. His scorching fingertips forcefully covering the places Lu Feng had touched. I heard His Highness's cold voice. Daring to violate the Crown Princess at night, killing palace staff, Lu Feng has shown contempt for royal authority. He will be executed by dismemberment in front of the market on a chosen day as a warning to others. Anyone who dares to plead for him will share his punishment. Consort Shu's face turned pale, and she stumbled back a few steps. His Highness's action immediately granted me the position of Crown Princess. His action of punishment was death. I closed the eyes of the old palace maid, unmoved. I had never been so clear-minded. If I hadn't bowed my head to His Highness, I would indeed be guilty of seducing Lu Feng and attempting to assassinate an official, as Consort Shu claimed. No one would stand up for me or the old palace maid. His Highness made me the Crown Princess. Though absurd, as I came from humble origins, it happened to align with the wishes of the ailing old emperor. The Crown Prince's exile was due to being dragged down by his overly powerful maternal family. Future Crown Princesses were to avoid having prominent family backgrounds. His Highness also conveniently gained a reputation as a benevolent ruler, forgiving and grateful. These days, countless noble families and political enemies of the Wei family have extended olive branches to me, trying to curry favor with the new Crown Princess. Among these people, I only met one person, Zhou Sihan, the head eunuch of the Directorate of Ceremonial. The Directorate of Ceremonial has been in decline in recent years, but their secretive methods remain. I have been in the spotlight lately, yet lack capable people. Our needs complement each other, and we quickly reached an agreement. The first thing I asked Zhou Sihan to do was to investigate the death of Shinji. To show his loyalty to me, the Directorate of Ceremonial acted swiftly. And within a few days, Zhou Sihan personally came to report to me. I stood by the window, the rain had been falling all night. Zhou Sihan, separated by the beaded curtain, meticulously described the events of that day. General Shen protected His Highness while leaving the city, falling behind to cover the rear, but was met with a premeditated dead end. He was once a proud young man, yet suffered humiliation before his death. Shinji's pain was immense. Those spoiled heirs were immensely pleased. The golden beast spewed fragrance, and from Zhou Sihan's mouth came one name after another. All were sons of officials and scoundrels. From beginning to end, I didn't say a word. I faced away from Zhou Sihan, watching the falling rain. After he finished reporting, he wisely withdrew. I looked at my palms. These were hands unlike Wei Shu's, having done rough work since childhood, calloused and hardened. The bloodstains from that day were actually no different. The names Zhou Sihan mentioned were etched into my heart. The night rain stopped. Kill. Kill them all. On the day Lu Feng was executed, I personally went to the execution ground. Zhou Sihan is a very capable person. Knowing my deep hatred for Lu Feng, he took special care of him while he was in prison. He used the best medicine to keep him alive, and the most painful punishments to torture him. Everything Shinji suffered was returned to him one by one. By the day of the execution, Lu Feng was no longer recognizable. The scene during the execution was bloody, yet I did not avert my gaze for even a moment. It was far from enough. Just the life of Lu Feng was far from enough to repay. When I turned my head, I unexpectedly caught sight of Wei Shu not far away. She was supported by her maid, her face pale, unable to hold back her vomit. Her eyes met my calm gaze. For the first time, I saw fear on Wei Shu's face. I smiled faintly, turned around, lifted my skirt, and got into the carriage. The old emperor was barely hanging on. It was uncertain when he would pass away. State affairs were all pressing on His Highness, who hadn't been reinstated for long. The court was full of treacherous storms, and his foundation wasn't very stable, so he was indeed very busy. Yet he rested at my place every day. Since I was already the crown princess, sharing the bed was naturally inevitable. His Highness's temperament was unpredictable, yet for some reason, he liked to hold me while sleeping. Back when we were exiled to the southern, His Highness also loved holding me while sleeping. But at that time, it was because the house was too small, surrounded by fences. Unable to see the sun during the day. His Highness would also be afraid. I could only endure his presence in his arms. The wound on his hand had healed, but it left a scar on his palm. His Highness never mentioned Shinji again, as if the matter had never happened. Thus, we lived in peace for half a month. One night, His Highness suddenly called my name, Rui. I was not asleep, quietly waiting for his next words. But he said nothing more. It wasn't until I was almost asleep that I heard him purse his lips and say, "I'm sorry." I knew what he felt guilty about. It was his neglect of me during the time right after his reinstatement. The crown prince came from a noble background. And after his reinstatement, he must have struggled for a period of time. To him, I was indeed a humiliation. To him, I was also a benefactor. Or perhaps, he realized that he had lost his heart. Thinking that letting me be his crown princess might not be impossible. Until I spoke in the Golden Throne Hall, saying I had long had someone in my heart. His Highness apologized for his coldness, indifference, and anger. I smiled, graciously saying, "It's all in the past. It's just that there are too many people who are good to His Highness." The Crown Prince's maternal family sacrificed their ironclad loyalty to protect only the Crown Prince. General Shen stayed behind to protect him while leaving the city. On his exile, countless secret guards protected him, old friends helped him. I was just one among them. How could His Highness have paid much attention to me at that time? He only overlooked one thing. If not for Shinji's share in his fate, I would never have been so good to him. His Highness knew I was using the Directorate of Ceremonial, yet he never said much. Consort Shu had the Wei family to rely on, I too should have something to lean on. Therefore, he specially raised the status of the Directorate of Ceremonial, giving me enough power. Apart from Lu Feng, there were still 6 families of scoundrels left to deal with. They were all from prominent families, notorious for their evil deeds. Always surrounded by followers wherever they went, making assassination impossible. So it had to be done openly. Initially, the Directorate of Ceremonial's reputation and status were not prominent. So we could only secretly collect evidence of the crimes committed by these scoundrels' families. Then send it to their political enemies, send it to those upright officials, and watch them fight. But the court was unpredictable, and often 9 out of 10 plans would fail. After half a year of busy work, we only managed to topple 2 families. So I recommended the chief eunuch Zhou Sihan to His Highness for reuse. His Highness was reinstated. And those who had exiled him and slandered the crown prince's party were still laughing and feasting in the court. He needed to stabilize his power, with many dirty and murderous things to do. The Directorate of Ceremonial became his sharpest knife. From then on, I no longer needed to painstakingly collect evidence of the crimes committed by the families behind these scoundrels. I only needed to let the eunuchs of the Directorate of Ceremonial break into their residences, pretending to throw down unfounded accusations. Then we could confiscate their properties, exile them. The capital was abuzz, saying the Directorate of Ceremonial was the Crown Princess's hound. General Li's family was the first to fall this way. On the day their properties were confiscated, Zhou Sihan held an umbrella for me, waiting outside the Li residence. Coincidentally, it was also a rainy day. The blood flowing from the Li family seeped all the way to my feet. I heard the cries of babies and women, but they suddenly stopped. Zhou Sihan bowed slightly, his voice sharp. Your Highness is soft-hearted, cannot see blood. But if not for the Li family's approval, how could young Master Li, that fool, dare to encircle and kill General Shen? Young Master Li was the one who first shot and broke General Shen's legs. The Li and Shen families were old enemies. They were not innocent, I thought. But I am equally guilty. The rain fell pitter-patter, someone was dragged out like a dead pig. Young Master Li had already been stuffed with mud when he was dragged and thrown at my feet. He could only glare at me with wide eyes. His eyes were filled with hatred, deep as the sea. Both his legs had been broken. I lowered my head slightly, my expression gentle. I only asked him one question. Do you still remember Shinji? For years have passed, you indulge in pleasure every day. Do you still remember Shinji? His face changed drastically, suddenly realizing, looking at me in disbelief, as if seeing a madwoman. Perhaps it's true, I have long gone mad. After leaving the Li residence, I realized today was actually the tomb sweeping day. I hesitated for a moment, then instructed the coachman and attendants to turn around and head outside the city. During tomb sweeping day, it's time to honor the departed souls. Outside the city, there is a cenotaph for Shinji, built voluntarily by the citizens of the capital who pooled their money and manpower. Since his youth, he defended the country and became famous throughout the capital. People expected that he would one day be remembered, alongside the crown prince as a wise ruler and a brilliant general. But now, only the cenotaph remains. I stopped the carriage nearby. Lifting the curtain to look outside, I saw a continuous stream of people paying respects at Shinji's grave. Some moved to tears and covering their faces as they cried. Some had already recognized my carriage, but dared not speak their anger, choosing instead to walk far around it in disgust. The notoriety of the crown princess had long spread throughout the capital. It was no longer news. The maid asked, Your Highness, will you not get out of the carriage? I was stunned. Lowering my gaze, I noticed the hem of my dress was still stained with blood. And after a long while, I shook my head. If I were to go and pay respects, it would only tarnish Shinji's good name. It's best if everyone never knew he once had a connection with me. Before returning to the palace, I glimpsed a beggar under the willow tree, disheveled and dirty. With the rain pouring down, he had nowhere to take shelter. I instructed the maid, give him an umbrella. The Li family has already fallen, how could the remaining families be far behind? Within just 3 months, the families behind those who once participated in the hunt against Shinji have either collapsed or disappeared. The crown princess's infamous reputation had spread far and wide. Yet few knew her original name was Rui, truly a gentle name. When His Highness arrived, I was still blending fragrances. Fragrances can calm the mind. I hadn't seen the crown prince lose his temper like this in a long time. He said, in 3 months, Wei Rui, how many families have you destroyed? How many people's blood is on your hands? Today in court, the Wei family brought half the ministers, demanding I sentence you to death. I had already received the news. To show his determination, the old patriarch of the Wei family even rammed his head against the pillar of the golden throne hall. He deeply regretted not realizing back then that a maid from the Wei family had the ability to bring ruin to the nation. I lit the incense, my eyes lowered and gentle, without any major fluctuations. I said, Then your highness, do as they say. His highness was speechless for a long time. When I turned my head, I saw the veins bulging on his forehead and neck. He forced out a voice from his throat, if you want to avenge him, why rush? I smiled slightly. It turns out his highness knew what I had been doing all along. His highness had more concerns than I did. He had experienced exile, and the arrogance of the past had long faded away, making him more adept at enduring. He was right. I should proceed slowly, so as not to burn myself with this fire. But I couldn't wait any longer. The hall was silent for a long time. The young crown prince stepped forward, silently embracing me. He buried his head into my neck. Warm liquid flowed past. His highness said, "Rui, I will protect you. The revenge is complete. Forget him." It's been a year since the crown prince returned to the capital. The old emperor has relinquished power, and the crown prince, supported by loyal ministers and aided by the Directorate of Ceremonial, has essentially seized control. The elderly and gravely ill emperor finally passed away on a sunny day. The palace was consumed by the emperor's passing. I led the people from the Directorate of Ceremonial and personally went to Consort Shu's chambers. Over the past 6 months, she has watched helplessly as I aligned with the eunuchs. And one by one, those who once harmed Shinji met their tragic ends. She has become gaunt and unrecognizable. The Wei family, proud of their integrity, could only curse the Directorate of Ceremonial in court. Consort Shu had tried to use her tactics against me. But to the eunuchs, they were insignificant. Yet, she never believed I would dare to be so bold to kill the crown prince's personally appointed consort, the legitimate daughter of the famed Wei minister. Until I threw a knife and white silk in front of her, forcing her to choose. She fell to the ground, scrambling backward in panic, only to be dragged back by the eunuchs. I crouched down, my tone still calm, but inevitably puzzled. "Miss, Rui is just a maid. She's been with you since childhood, never making a single mistake in serving you. Just because General Shen liked me, and you wanted him dead, why?" For years ago, I still called Wei Shu Miss and was her maid. Wei Shu was momentarily dazed, then slowly began to laugh. "Shinji gave you a piece of green jade." I remembered. It was an exquisite jade, which Shinji had found during his military campaign, and personally carved into the shape of a flower. When Miss saw it, she merely smiled and then smashed it. Wei Shu continued, "Something I don't even have, how could you deserve it? How could you?" I looked away, feeling sorrowful, realizing the reason was so trivial. I ordered the eunuchs to first cut out her tongue for inciting trouble, then personally strangled her to death with the white silk. I watched as she slowly lost her breath. His Highness was wrong that day. Only now, with Consort Shu's death, can I say that my revenge is truly fulfilled. What a relief. I never believed His Highness could protect me. So I seized every opportunity to push forward, never considering a retreat for myself. In fact, it turned out to be true. The old emperor, on his deathbed, passed the throne to the crown prince. But he also left a decree, ordering the public execution of the crown princess. It seems my notorious reputation was well known even to the old emperor. Upon hearing the decree, His Highness immediately sealed off the entire palace. But the news spreading was only a matter of time. When the crown prince came to my palace, I was kneeling at the desk. A few flowers were placed in a plain vase on the small table, and the gentle sunlight streamed through the window, resembling fine silk. It was clean and beautiful, like a painting. His Highness's face was pale and gloomy, yet he walked softly, unable to speak for a long time. On the day I married the crown prince, it seemed like the same scene. The crown prince suspected I was a spy and refused to come near. I lifted the veil myself and solemnly said, "Your Highness, I am Rui. I will protect you." His Highness laughed, perhaps never having been promised by such a young lady before. Unexpectedly, I truly kept my word. Now, with the palace bells tolling and the emperor deceased, His Highness, as the crown prince, clearly had many things to attend to, yet spent so much time silently in my palace. I calmly raised my eyes, unafraid of the outcome of death. "Your Highness, it's merely execution. To achieve mutual understanding, what is death worth?" The old emperor was paving the way for the crown prince. The directorate of ceremonial had done too much for both me and the crown prince. Although the crown prince had control over the court, he had incurred public wrath and resentment. If I were granted death, public anger could be appeased. His Highness looked at me, lost in thought, but spoke of something else. He said, "Rui, if I had met you earlier, would you have liked me?" I was stunned but laughed. "Your Highness forgets. One year at the Imperial Garden banquet, I was fishing for a bracelet in the pool, and you saw me." The crown prince was puzzled. One year, Wei Shu took me to the Imperial Garden banquet. When she was in a bad mood, she liked to vent on the maids, making things difficult by saying her bracelet had fallen into the old lotus pond. So I took off my shoes and socks, waded in the water searching all afternoon, my skin swollen. At that time, the crown prince, who was highly esteemed, passed by, glanced at me casually, and frowned slightly. The attendant immediately understood and scolded me. Where did this maid come from, so blind to bump into His Highness? They thought I was deliberately waiting here to encounter His Highness. I was punished to kneel. Only the young man in purple beside the crown prince laughed. The crown prince is narcissistic, don't mind him. The attendant fell silent. The crown prince did not care and walked on. The young man in purple stayed behind, waded into the pool, and asked what jade bracelet I had lost. Looking back, in bright clothes and riding a spirited horse, carefree, it turned out he was Shinji. I mentioned this past event. His Highness suddenly turned back, realizing that he and Shinji had seen me on the same day, even earlier than him. I looked up and smiled, answering His Highness's question. If I had seen His Highness earlier, I almost got punished. Rui only likes those who are good to her. Your Highness, I would not have liked you. His Highness coughed, covered his lips, and blood seeped through his fingers. He turned away. I see. I will send you out of the palace. I widened my eyes in shock. The weight of this sentence was immense. If His Highness did not follow the late Emperor's decree, who would accept his rightful position? I thought about it and still shook my head. The kingdom is easily disturbed. Who knows what storms might come and what good young men like Shinji might die. His Highness was not surprised, his voice very soft. He said, "Shinji is still alive." I thought I heard wrong, and suddenly lifted my head, everything froze. His Highness said, "Just received the news today." I seemed to be born mute, unable to hear a sound, motionless. I had many questions, wanted to ask where he had gone, why he hadn't come to see me. I don't know how long passed before I asked, "Is he well?" His Highness did not answer, only said, "I will send you out of the palace," to his side. Outside the window, the sky had changed, clouds rolling. Even if His Highness was deceiving me, it made my decision waver heavily. I lowered my eyes to look at my hands. A year of pampering, with countless precious ointments applied, the calluses in my palms had disappeared, no longer resembling a maid's hands. Just yesterday, I had used these hands to strangle Consort Shu. Unfortunately, too many lives were stained. Heavy rain poured through the window, the rain stinging my eyes. I realized, unknowingly, I was already in tears. I hoarsely said, "Your Highness, I cannot leave the palace." The directorate of ceremonial's deeds were too dirty. Even if most things were unrelated to me, those people still blamed me for everything. If I left the palace, beside Shinji, once my presence was known to enemies, I would surely bring disaster upon Shinji, leaving him with no burial place. Sometimes, I look in the mirror and often don't recognize myself. I selfishly hope he only remembers my kind appearance from before. Your Highness. Using Rui's life to exchange for a stable court. No public resentment, and General Shen's well-being is indeed a worthwhile trade. Shinji is still alive. This is the best ending I can think of. The late Emperor's edict commanded that I be publicly poisoned, to prevent a substitute from taking my place, allowing me to leave alive. This is my second time returning to the Golden Throne Hall. To this day, I do not know if what His Highness told me is true. I don't know what reason would cause Shinji not to come see me. Therefore, I never asked him more about Shinji. If it's false, I won't delve into it, at least leaving a thought. If it's true, and I delve into it, I'm afraid I won't be willing to die. With His Highness present, those old ministers dared not speak out to curse me. only looking at me with hatred in their eyes, yet their expressions held a sense of relief. After all, I am about to die. The eunuch announced the late emperor's edict and presented a cup of poisoned wine. His Highness did not turn away, the veins on his forehead bulging, using all his strength to restrain his violence. The new emperor felt helpless, then powerless, even angry. I did not hesitate, drinking the wine in one gulp. The poison coursed through my intestines, twisting my thoughts instantly. In front of the Golden Throne Hall, someone cried out with heart-wrenching pain, "Rui." The voice was familiar, and I turned back suddenly. The person was no longer human-like, his face already ruined by indulgence, bones visible. Flesh connected by broken wood, walking awkwardly. Resembling a nightmarish creature more than anyone else. I only saw clearly for a moment. Then my senses were lost. In my heart, he slowly transformed back to his original appearance. Purple clothes, high ponytail, peach blossom eyes. Fast horse, general, hibiscus flower. I vomited blood, desperately trying to crawl over. The crowd in the hall was in an uproar, only His Highness at the top remained calm, unsurprised. Blood gushed out in large amounts, pain piercing my heart. I don't know if this is a dying dream. Shinji carried me on his back. I know he wants to take me out of the palace. No one stopped him because everyone could see, I would die within a quarter of an hour. The palace path was long, seemingly endless. I couldn't hear him speak or see anyone, but I knew Shinji was here. Before I died, I finally saw him once. I had never felt such sorrow. Never felt such fortune. I remembered, long ago, I had just exchanged marriage vows with Shinji. When Shinji rode away, he laughed proudly. "Rui, wait for me to carry you through the door next year." Only then did I know, on the wedding day, the bride was to be carried by her husband, blushing. Unexpectedly, those were his last words to me, and the capital changed overnight. Shinji came to fulfill the promise. I relaxed and closed my eyes.